Okay, welcome to another podcast from the Teacher Learning team. My name's Nick MacDonald, a teacher and researcher into education.
Hello, everybody, from me as well. Michael Bird here, and you can see from the bio on my on the website. But I've been a teacher for getting on for 30 years now, so quite long in the tooth. Yeah, we've published, or I've published a new post on the website. Have you had a chance to read it through, Nick?
Yes, I have. We've been talking about this one for quite a while,
We have.
and it's quite short, but I think it gets to the point pretty quickly. So let's discuss it. It's called "What is the Plan?" And this is a very good question when it comes to the future of education right now, as far as I can see. Having read it, let's see, the important thing that it mentions two things essentially: the recruitment crisis and the facade that schools and universities have to put up. So why is it that schools and universities are putting up what appears to be a bit of a facade? Some of it's real, but not all of it possibly. Why are they doing this?
Well, this goes back to that question of reification that we talk about quite regularly, Nick, don't we? And those of you who know about sociocultural psychology, and particularly the work of Etienne Wenger and Jean Lave, this notion of reification means that we create representations of things, in bits of paper, in documents, in words, where the things that we're trying to represent are somehow intangible. And I think that's quite important when you're thinking about schools, because one of the things that schools have wrestled with for many, many, many decades and centuries is the issue of learning and trying to make learning tangible. And we do that, of course, with examination grades. We do it with league tables. We do it with accountability mechanisms. We do it in all sorts of ways. But the thing to bear in mind is that those representations of learning are never the full rounded sort of
View of learning itself.
Yeah, it's never a comprehensive representation of everything that is entailed by that word learning. And so consequently, because we do live in a culture of high standards, and we live in a culture of hyper accountability in schooling, the only way that we've got to reassure the public that public funds are being used efficiently and properly, and that we have enough faith and confidence in schools to let our children go to them to be educated, the only way that we can give that reassurance that they are good places, they're high quality places, is by producing reams and reams and reams of paperwork, slogans, by dressing up an image of high standards. Now, I don't blame schools for this, and I don't blame universities for doing this. And a lot of it comes from, of course, the corporate sector, because that's what they do. That's their meat and potatoes, isn't it? If you're in a corporation, if you want to sell your assets, or your manufacturing products, the best way to do it is to cultivate an image of success and high quality, and so on and so forth. Well, schools, I guess, are in a more market-driven economy these days, and so they have the same sort of requirement, I suppose. So I think one of the things that I think is important about this is that we can't just eliminate that facade. It is going to be there. It's always going to be there. But what I'm finding now, in the hours and hours and hours of meetings that I spend going through development plans, improvement plans, self-evaluation documents, reports from here, there, and everywhere, and so on, I can see that essentially the message I'm hearing from all of the reports that I've read through, all of the basic sort of development plans, is that basically things are fine. You know, things are fine. And yes, there are challenges, but we've got a plan. And I unfortunately, I think that isn't the truth anymore, because I think that the educational system, and I would say, and I mean schools and universities in that, are going through an absolutely unprecedented, and I know people overuse that word, but it is the only word to use at the moment, series of challenges. You know, the strikes are but one, you know, and they are simply a small but significant symptom of a whole raft, I think, of other massive challenges. And
so if you yeah,
there's
okay,
just no plan.
right. If you, I mean, Tony Blair once said, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And these paperwork systems are clearly there to provide some kind of paper trail or accountability trail, so that these things can be measured and proven to be in place. I mean, where's the disconnect between that that idea and the reality, and particularly now?
Yeah. Well, I think the disconnection is because you know, schools and universities, for their own survival, have to promote an image of success. And so, you know, that cultivates a kind of, you know, planned tactical ignoring of the serious challenges that I think they face. I mean, I think that the biggest challenge of the teaching profession actually is the recruitment crisis. And, you know, admittedly, that it's not clear what schools can do about that. It's not clear what sort of universities can do about that. But there are things, actually, you know, in the limited way that they can do about that. You know, schools have some power to, you know, enhance the sort of pay, well, not so much the pay, but certainly the conditions of work, you know, in terms of the structuring of the school day and the organization of timetables and so on and so forth. They can, you know, make a teacher's life easier if they make certain decisions. Same with universities. I think universities could do more in terms of attracting teachers into the profession through ITE programs and so on and so forth.
But it clearly is going to impact schools if the pot of teachers that are being created every year through universities such as yours is limited.
Exactly right. And there's no coordination between what the individual, in fact, you know, there's sort of still this competition, you know, between providers, between schools who want their children, you know, to fill their classrooms so that they can get a budget. But at the same time, if they can't put teachers in front of them, it's almost as though that's of secondary importance.
So
and I
even
just don't see that there's any solution that's being proposed for this.
And of course, there's another knock-on effect of that, in that teachers will pick the best schools to go to. So those that are measured by Ofsted and league tables and the like, that are further down those league tables, it's going to be harder for them to recruit anyway, because the number of applicants will be lower.
Yes. And I mean, I don't know about you, Nick, but I know that in sort of settings where we have been sort of colleagues working in a classroom, and I can say that I've been in other settings where the same has been the case, is that I applied for those positions because I was sort of taken in by the marketing. You know, this is a great school, it's outstanding. You know, it's you know, come and teach at this school because you will thrive, and you know, we make massive investments in professional development and so on and so forth. And then when I actually joined those settings, actually the reality was somewhat different. And I saw I mean, I've taught in schools that were both outstanding and requires improvement. And you know what? I it wasn't obvious to me the difference in some school. You know, I've been in schools that have been rated outstanding, and I have seen nothing but, you know, utter mediocrity. And same with schools that have been you know, requires improvement. I've seen some absolutely stunning examples of amazing practice in those. So, you know, this I think is where I think that you know, and I make this point in the post a little bit, really, is that I think Ofsted is too much of a sledgehammer. It doesn't really take into account a lot of the nuance, and individual teachers, I think, are tarred, you know, with the sort of humiliations that might come with a categoried outcome in an Ofsted inspection, when in some respects it's nothing to do with them, you know.
So, which school doesn't require improvement? Which school would not benefit from improvement?
Exactly.
There are none, obviously.
You've hit the nail on the head there. You know, you've hit the nail on the head there. And you see, it's interesting because there are some schools that are outstanding and that are very self-consciously outstanding, who will not accept that there is anything to improve, you know, except what's on the development plan. And what's on the development plan for improvement is essentially, you know, the word continuing to maintain, you know, or, you know, embedding sustained, etc., will loom large in that paperwork. But actually, you know, it's just facade. And I guarantee, you know, and I've seen it, you know, with my own eyes, you know, I will see some quite alarming and disturbing practices going on in some of those settings. So anyway,
if there isn't a plan, what should the plan be?
Well, I think, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, haven't we, Nick? Is that I know that there is a danger in doing this. We've talked about the possibility that we need to have some kind of a royal commission, you know, into the education system. I mean, I'm not sure if that is actually the answer, because the danger of doing something like that is that you create a new facade. In other words, you know, the commission itself and the report that gets produced from it is essentially going to be wide of the mark and not actually get to the quick of the issue. And, you know, there is a tendency, I think, in government circles over the last sort of 5, 10, 15, 20 years to put things out for an inquiry, public inquiry or a royal commission, as a way of putting it into the long grass, you know, as a almost as a sort of distracting psychology of keeping the status quo, really. So I'm not sure about that anymore. I just think that I mean, this is what our website is about, isn't it, really? Our website is about really teachers. Teachers have to be invested in, you know, teachers have to be experts in understanding what learning is and what education is for. And teachers need to be trusted. Teachers need to be trained properly. Teachers need very, very high quality continuing professional development, not indoctrination programs, not sort of culture war, you know, propaganda. They need to have their minds opened in order for them to inspire and open the minds of children, you know, and that is how you get to a fulfilling professional working life.
As indeed in other professions,
yes,
where the organization that looks after those people
yes,
really do drive the professional nature of those professions, such as the BMA and the Royal College of Nursing and the legal profession. It's all about driving it forward and continually changing. and
the
learning.
government will say, yes, well, we are investing in teacher education because of the, core content framework and the early career teacher program, which is now extending, from simply a 1 year to now a 3 year program of entitlements for teacher training. But again, I have worries about that because it's a blueprint map of training for teachers. There's a very, very sort of iron cage of content that teachers must know and understand. And that is what is deemed to be training. I mean, I'm not saying that there isn't value in it, but I'm not.
But it is one size fits all.
Mine's that way. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, it is one size fits all, basically, isn't it?
No, it is. Absolutely is.
And of course, one of the focuses of our website is that isn't appropriate for children, and the variety of children that we have in the system and the learning that they have. So why is it appropriate for anything else?
And it runs counter to the government policy of diversifying the sector, which I thought was what free schools and academization programs, multi-academy trusts was all about. It seems a bit, well, it seems sort of slightly paradoxical, isn't it? That they sort of deregulate, if you like, the sort of education market, take schools away from local education authorities, and then impose from the center, a blueprint map that all schools must follow. I agree with you, Nick. It's not a sustainable system. It doesn't honor, the individual expertise of schools and of the individual component teachers, in schools. I mean, there's just so much talent, amongst the teacher workforce, and they're just leaving it in droves. Because they're fed up. And, and I don't know, I'm probably going to make myself incredibly unpopular, but when I say this, but I wouldn't be surprised that if you could resolve the teacher strike issue and the pay issue, I think, by if you could, I'm sure teachers would actually accept a less than inflation rate pay offer if something was done about all of these other things that we continually talk about. In other words, a proper investment in teachers' own professional development, a change of culture, maybe a sort of relinquishing slightly the intensity of the hyper accountability, maybe a sort of an Ofsted approach that genuinely improves lives and raises standards rather than simply just judges the standards of schools in a very, very, very sort of sledgehammered way. I think those things could be relaxed or made to fit in with a genuinely professionalizing culture of teachers. I think they could teachers are likely to see some flexibility in pay offers. Shoot me down if I'm wrong. Be wrong.
Well, I think the level of accountability does cause problems, definitely. So we've got a Royal Commission, we've got a lot of discussion there on the professionalism. Our website, of course, mentions a couple of other things, which is driving, which is a focus on learning, which I think is somewhat covered by the professionalism, but also one of the focuses on the website is the middle one, which is
emergent practice.
Yes, emergent practice. Yes, and tailoring your learning to tailoring the teaching to the learning that emerges, so that it becomes relevant to pupils. And when it becomes relevant, it then becomes powerful because they then engage in it at all levels, all schools, at all levels.
It's interesting you say that. I mean, because we were talking about this before, weren't we, Nick, about classroom management and sort of behavior management, and of course for trainee teachers, for teachers who are just starting out, And quite often for teachers who are moving schools, it's one of the most nerve-wracking things that they face, is that they worry about classes that are difficult to manage, difficult to control, that don't seem to have a sort of ethic of learning at all, or that don't seem to hold teachers with the sort of respect they deserve, and so on. And I understand that, and I get that, but often the discussion around it is at the level of technique, what classroom management techniques are. And most of the literature will say it's about a lot more than just that. It's all about relationships. It's all about generating that trust between pupils, and that comes with time. And it requires a teacher to be very dedicated and to be very, very sort of focused. And you know what? It's listening to the pupils that makes a terrific difference in the relationship that a teacher develops with their classes. One of the things that's very rarely mentioned in behavior management, I mean, it's mentioned all the time, of course, in the assessment literature, but it's not mentioned very often in the behavior management literature or classroom management literature, is the impact and effectiveness of marking children's books regularly and providing genuinely high quality feedback to pupils about their work, that shows to pupils that the teacher has actually read it and has actually looked quite closely. Now, I know there's a massive workload demand on teachers to do that, but that has a massive and an underrated impact on the development of trust between pupils and teachers.
Which
and
is key for learning.
When I used to manage departments in schools, there was often a correlation, between a sort of a frosty relationship between a teacher and a class. And then when I have a look at their books, when was the last time they were marked? Some time ago.
Right.
So it's kind of it's very interesting, isn't it? Very interesting.
And in other cultures, the number of contact hours per year changes. For example, in Singapore, it's about 500 to 600 hours a year, whereas in this country, it's closer to 900 hours a year. So some of that time it's essential that they develop it to two of these three things we just talked about, the things that schools can control, the professionalism, high quality CPD, and some of those hours were devoted to then you focusing on or giving more attention to your class.
Teachers teach too much here. They do.
Yeah.
They teach too much.
It's a culture. It's just a culture of hyper accountability and hard work, isn't it?
It is,
seemingly.
I mean, it would be interesting, wouldn't it? And I know that probably because of the teacher recruitment shortage, we're probably going to have to go down this route. But I can see and envisage in the future that teachers are going to be providing work for pupils to get on with in sort of private study classes. Where schools can't actually put an expert teacher in front of the class, but they can at least put a cover supervisor
with the work set by a teacher,
and the class has to do work set by the expert teacher. I mean, I don't think there's necessarily something wrong with that, and it's probably what we're going to have to do if the teacher recruitment crisis doesn't repair itself. But that is, of course, going to, I mean, there are some benefits to that. So, for example, you are making children, in essence, do homework in school in times, that are sort of timetabled in school hours. And that might help some pupils. That might also develop a sense of autonomy, maybe a little bit more independence, where if they know they can't ask the teacher for help, they're going to have to work things out for themselves.
Go through modeled examples, or read the information in the textbooks and work it out from there. So to finish off then, is what do we need to do to make this happen? This increase in professionalism. I mean, the Royal Commission is one thing, but the increase in professionalism and the focus away from hyper accountability onto a more focus on emergent practice, perhaps even teaching the children what locally they need to do, which is the other element of our website.
That's right. And there are some schools that do this already.
Mm.
I mean, we could talk about royal commissions, we could talk about changes of government, we could talk about changes of policy. And I think, given the crisis that we have at the moment, that there is going to be a need for that. But schools still have incredible power to transform their own environments and to change their own cultures, really. And those schools that do it really, really well and are very effective with it, who have a very driven sort of head teacher and leadership team, they can do so much already to fill teachers' sails with wind, and actually to create development plans that matter, that get to the heart of what we're trying to do, where genuinely high quality dispersed continuing professional development is a matter of course, and that there's a rich debate and discussion, and there is a rich culture of sharing practice, learning from each other. There are schools that do that. So we need to encourage it, we need to capture it. But unfortunately, what I'm seeing in a lot of the paperwork, the red tape, the kite marks, is I'm seeing complacency, really. I'm not seeing that.
Well, we're going to have to come up with something as a nation, and we need to play our part in that in some way. Yes. Very good. So we'll leave it there for this week. Thank you very much for listening, and the links to the things that were mentioned in this are below, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye for now.
Bye.